Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Relentless Growth Podcast with myself, Chase Calhoun, and my good friend Jack Maher. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's going to be a great episode today.
Cool. Well, today we're going to talk about something that I think is super important and been very valuable to my own kind of path, and that's kind of who you surround yourself is super important and why. But before we do that, why don't we start with either a win or preferably a win and an update? What's new in your world?
Yeah, I'll give a real tangible win that I think Chase will understand. So one of and I'm Jack Maher again. Our company is John Maher Builders. We're located in Spring Hill. We're about 30 minutes south of Nashville, and we build new construction, single family, and multifamily. That is our primary business. And we also we do a lot of things. And so we're developing a site right now in Columbia, Tennessee. And it seems like every site we've developed for the past couple of years has a tremendous amount of dirt that we do not need. And so it's a constant battle. We spend more money than most people could fathom hauling dirt every year. And so we had just made the call like yesterday morning. All right, hey, we can't find anybody to take this dirt. We've got to haul it off. And one of my guys got a call from a guy that we've worked with before. And he's like, hey, I need 2,000 loads, which is about how much we have. And he's like, and I'll come get it. I'll put 45 trucks on you tomorrow. And so that's about $500,000 swing in cost of dirt. And so it's a real tangible thing. It's a very specific thing, but it's a big win. It's a real thing. Dirt management takes up way too much of my life than it should. So that's a real tangible win. It's a big win that we just had yesterday.
That's awesome. And it's funny how people would never realize how expensive that is. I always joke around, like, because it seems like either we need dirt or we need to get rid of it, but never both at the same time. No. I almost just joke around that we need like one site that's got too much dirt, one that's not enough, so we can just move it from point A to point B and have something to do with it. And people will pay. Like when you need dirt, like you got to pay for every load of it, not just the trucking, but the dirt itself costs money. And so it's kind of wild. But that's cool. That's awesome, man. That's a big savings. So for people just tuning in for the first time, again, my name is Chase Calhoun. I'm based out of Central Arkansas, so just neighboring state to Jack. We do single family and small multifamily, a lot of ground up new construction development right now, a lot of build to rent. So build to rent's really been what we're pushing on this year. I think an update in our world, we've been working through a subdivision start for build to rent specifically. So the subdivision's already built out for us. We bought it probably about a year and a half ago now. And have been trying to navigate entitlement processes and figure out exactly what we're going to do. And it looks like we've got a kind of a clear path forward at this point. So we've got plans or in the final stages. We've got kind of our underwriting and budgets and everything done and looking good. And so now we just started the process last week to shop it out to some banks to see who's going to do the financing on it. And so it's been kind of a cool experience because for us, it's small to the projects you're doing, Jack, but it's big for us. And so it's been interesting to shop this out to some banks. And it's funny how it's like it's almost like the more money you ask for, the kind of the easier it gets and the more professional the people are that are getting involved. So it's actually been kind of nice. I'm like, man, this is nice. It's like usually if you're just asking for a little bit of money, sometimes you're forced to like really have to explain all this stuff to people because they don't necessarily, the bankers may not necessarily get what you're doing. But at this level or this amount of money, you get really professional people that really not only understand what you're doing, but can appreciate it and see the value in it. And so it's just been kind of a nice change and hope to continue down that path because I do think it'll be a little bit easier and more scalable long run. So cool. Let's jump into it. Today we decided to talk about, why it's so important to surround yourself, I guess, not only with people that you want to be like. So there's that saying that you'll become, exactly like the 5 people that you decide to surround yourself with. And so, God, I can think of a million different ways to go with this, but I truly see value in it. That's something I learned a long time ago. And I think it's so important for you to not only pay attention to it, but be very careful who you spend time with and surround yourself, because whether you like it or not, you're going to head in the direction of those people that you're spending time with in every aspect of your life. I know for me, I made the conscious decision early on to join a group like GoBundance when I didn't feel like I was ready to be a part of that group. And I wanted to be around those people, but it was like very intimidating to even make that first jump to do that. And then when you start, I guess surrounding yourself with people like that, you're definitely like, they're way farther along than you, which makes it that much more kind of intimidating. But how powerful that can be because it can pull you forward. And then that's something I've noticed and continue to pay attention to as my, I guess, career in entrepreneurship has progressed. What's your experience been with that so far?
Yeah, I think, man, in every aspect of life, it's one of the more critical things you can do. And I think it's one of the harder things to do right now because it takes intentionality. It takes, setting aside time for, Zoom calls or in-person meetings. Like it pulls you out of your world. And so it's not without its sacrifices to make those things work. But I can point to, mostly men, but also women in every part of my life who have made a tremendous difference because I spent time with them and because they were so much farther along that it was inspirational. I think I kind of view the 5 people you spend time with, that's like people on your path, people who are in a similar stage of life, you're headed towards the right direction. And then there are people who are like, you can't even see the path to how they got to where they are. It's
Yeah.
like they're like 3 mountains beyond where you're even looking and you can't
Yeah.
see it. But man, they're some of the most inspirational people. And I think when you spend time with them, they're some of the most normal people at the same time, which is kind of incredible. You always expect there to be some secret sauce, like, some big difference you see between them and you or other people. And a lot of times it's not. It's they've perfected something or they've spent enough time doing it. But it's to what Chase said, man, it's intimidating. Like walking into a room or walking into a meeting with a guy where they could be meeting with nearly anybody else on the planet, and they're taking an hour to meet with you. And but the value you get out of that is so incredible. I mean, just like in my own in real estate, I think people are so open. People want to do that, and I think especially for young guys, if you target, the older generation, they want to sit down with you. They want to share everything they know. They are going to hold nothing back. I mean, to me, 9 times out of 10, they'll give you a pro forma from their last project. They'll tell you what they're paying for X or Y or Z or how they did this. Or there's just such a hunger for them to pass on their knowledge. And I think there's a big gap right now. There's a generational gap, especially in construction and real estate. And so, yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's probably one of the more valuable ways you could spend your time with any free time you have.
Yeah. I think it's worth maybe at least talking about how with this whole thing, like who you surround yourself with is who you're going to become. Like at some point, like I think, and maybe especially speaking towards young men out there, like you really need to spend some time and think about like, who do you want to become? Right. Like what do I want to be? Um, and I think it's important to decide that, because if you don't decide that, and you're just hanging out with whoever, like who you went to high school with or who your college buddies are, like that's it. That's who you're going to be like. I can personally speak to this because in like a past life, I did something completely different. And I got the opportunity and it served me well in life, but I got to spend a lot of time with some really like, kind of tough rough around the edges dudes, who were brave and fearless and would run into danger without even thinking about it, put their own life on the line. And it was awesome because I became very much like that, and I gained a lot of value from it. But I'm just going to be honest and say the rest of their lives were not very, something to look up to. Like they had a lot of other issues that kind of came along and probably went hand in hand with a lot of that stuff. But that's very much like, if you're spending all your time with people like that, that's what you're going to become like. And so at some point, like before I started down this entrepreneurial journey, I realized that that was not the life that I wanted to live. And it was weird because I just got this weird opportunity through a new job I had where I started spending time around a lot of like successful business owners. And I realized there's just other, like you were saying, there's other options out there. And it's amazing how much people will be willing to pour into you. And then you almost, in my opinion, you have to make a weird, like kind of decision to cut some of that other people out of your life and not like be mean and not like, hey, we can't be friends, but it's just, I'm not going to come over and we're not going to hang out or we're not going to go do this kind of stuff, like, because I'm kind of focused on this different path. And then I will say, like, when you're first starting out, that can get kind of lonely sometimes because you're not necessarily, and I've heard this a lot of times before, you have not made it to the point where like you're necessarily ready to be friends with the people you want to be friends with, but you're also not wanting to be friends with the people so it can get very lonely along the way. And then that will happen several times along the way. But then, yes, kind of deciding who you want to be and then doing anything you can to try to get around those people when you have the opportunity. And for me, it was several years later where I was heading down this entrepreneurial path. And then I got the opportunity to be a part of GoBundance and where I was able to actually get in a room and get in GoPods and spend time with guys who were not just like trying to be, what I would consider good men in all aspects of their life. They were also very successful. And so once you get around those people, it can't help but pull you in that direction. And then I'd also say, like, there's people that I spend time with who are ultra wealthy and successful, and I'll like spend as much time with them as I can, and I'll listen and try to learn. But there's other people I know who have zero wealth and are not financially successful at all, but there's other aspects of their life that I highly, highly look up to. So either they're super healthy and they're super fit, or they're amazing husbands and lead their families really well and are great dads, or their spiritual walk with God is super strong and they're very knowledgeable there. And so same thing, like they may not be, different parts of their life may not be, super excelling, but there's some aspect of their life that I look up to and excel. And then just getting around people like that and also spending time with them is very powerful.
Yeah, man. For everybody listening, I feel like that was the highlight of the show. I think the points Chase made are spot on. One being, you have to take time. You have to understand, like, who do you want to be? And I think that sometimes, like, I think we grew up being told, hey, you can be anything you want to be. But the reality is, I feel like most of us were on a path to some way, shape, or form. But like, you can change that radically if you want to. But you have to make a decision to do that. And I think to Chase's point of, like, you have to decide who you want to spend time with. And even if you never have that thought, it's still true. Like, even if you never intentionally spend time with anybody, the people you do spend time with, the same theory is true, regardless of whether you're intentional about it or not intentional about it. And so you might as well be intentional about it. So decide, hey, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be like? And how, like, what's a way to get there? Who are some people who are on that journey as well? And I think to Chase's point, there are people in different aspects of your life. If you call it work, personal, faith, if you call it 3 categories, you may have a couple key different people in those categories. And then I would take it a step farther. There's a concept that my coach talks about a lot. He calls it who. He calls it who's and super who's, where like a who is somebody who, like, you look up to, you want to spend time with. And then a super who is somebody who's like the next level. And I think for the purposes of this conversation, it would be like, hey, if you've got 3 categories and there's 2 people that excel in all 3, like, those are your super who's. Like, how do you spend as much time with those guys as possible? How do you understand, like, how they balance their family, how they balance their business, how they balance their faith? Like, how can you spend as much time as possible around those guys to learn from them? Because if that's really where you want to end up, that's the most valuable time. There was a guy, my wife and I had dinner with a guy who I really look up to last night. And I go to church with him. He's an excellent businessman. And he was telling me last night, his podcast peaked last week at inside the top 10 on Spotify.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And so, like, just even for the purposes of this podcast, like, he's got a studio, he's got creative people, like, he's got he's so far beyond where Chase and I are right now that like it doesn't even make sense. Like they spend a whole day filming every week. Like he's got an entire machine set up, and maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. But just by spending time with him, it challenges me, and it makes me think, man, if he can do this, we can do the next step up. And so like those dinners, those meetings, those are so incredibly important because they push you. And if it's a great relationship, they're going to call you out. If you not, I think calling out is like maybe not the best term, like, but they're going to challenge you. Like they're going to, if there's a part of your life that you're not doing what you need to do, like those conversations are going to come up, and that's so valuable to be challenged like that so that you can keep growing and staying on that journey that you want to be on.
I think that's a great and very simple example, like the podcast thing. And I think a lot of it's like, one, they'll share knowledge with you, like you touched on earlier, which is, it's like, they've learned all the stuff that works and doesn't work. And so it's like, they can just kind of save you a lot of time by sharing that knowledge. But I think a lot of it, at least for me personally, but honestly, I think it's for a lot of people too, is it's almost like a subconscious thing, because you have the dinner with him, you talk about that stuff, and then you realize that, again, he's just a normal dude. He's operating, when it comes to like the podcast thing, at 100x where we're at right now. But you're like, it's like, man, if he can do it, it's not that big of a deal for him. Like there's no reason why I couldn't. And I think for myself, at least personally, especially in that like GoBundance context and all the guys I've been around in there, it like almost just can't help but pull you forward. And so it's a really interesting thing, like a really interesting and weird thing. And like I said, it can be positive or negative. So that's why it's so important to be curated, I guess, to a point with who you're spending time with. And I love the who and the super who thing, because I do think I can think of a handful of guys who are just like way, way farther along. And it's like, I will do, I'll go out of my way to try to provide any kind of value, although it's a lot of times hard, because there's really not, when somebody's that far along in certain aspects of their life, there's not a whole lot of value you can necessarily provide to them, I think, other than like, if they want to give you advice and like just being a good listener and like steward of that advice and trying to take it to heart and stuff like that, because there's really not, if we're talking financially or like the podcast, there's like, you're not gonna be able to give him any advice that's going to help his podcast if he's top down on Spotify, right? He's just, and if you try to, he's almost going to get like annoyed or laugh at you probably. So it's more just being like in that situation, if they're willing to spend time with you and pour into you, just being a really good listener and maybe asking questions. And what I try to think about a lot is like, when I get around somebody like that, is just like, I just need to shut up and listen. And then ask good questions, and then shut up and listen, and just let them talk, and then be appreciative of it and stuff like that. Because again, it's, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to help that person's podcast be better. So we're just getting started and just trying to figure it out. And so it is very interesting. I would say, is there any other maybe parts of your business or your personal life where you've experienced that?
Yeah, I think personal life, definitely. Like from a faith perspective, like there's a guy who I've spent probably honestly an hour of like 2 to 3 hours with every week for the past 7 years. So like the story I tell on him is he invited me to a Bible study he had with a couple guys, and I'm still in it today. I had a Bible that had study notes in it, and he asked a question like day one. And the question was written in my study notes. And I was like, man, it's day one. The question's right here. The answer's right beneath it. Like, I'm going to get some great brownie points, and I'm going to answer this thing spot on. And so I say the answer, and he's like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, it's written here. Like, it's not wrong. And, he explained it in great detail, and it was. And, but it was somebody, he was a business guy. He was really high up at McDonald's. And so he's an incredible businessman. They run a family business now. But man, he knew the Bible really well. Like his faith is incredible. And so he's pushed me in incredible ways in the past 7 years. And I still spend a lot of time with him every week, still look up to him. But man, I would not be where I am in my faith journey without him in my life. And so, it's just, it can be anything. It can be any part of your life. It could be like you mentioned personal training. Like there are some guys who, when I was training for the Ironman, like if I had not spent time with them, I would not have been able to do it. Like they taught me things, they pushed me. Like it can be any part of your life that you're working on, and there's a way, there's a path for you to get better. And then I think one thing I want to touch on is there's the other side of it where most people you talk to will, if you make these decisions, will no longer understand exactly what you're doing or why you're doing it. And it's a reality, and it's not a good or bad thing. Like you can still have friends outside of this journey, but it's just different. Like one of the things that like sticks in my head when I was training for the Ironman, on Sundays before church, I would bike 50 miles. And then I was also intermittent fasting. So I wouldn't eat until after church.
Yeah.
So I was running like a wild calorie deficit.
Yeah.
And so this was before kids. We'd go out to eat every day, every church. And I'd eat literally 3 or 4 breakfasts. Like, my bill at the restaurant was just stupid because I was so hungry. And like, there were a lot of times where people were like, man, I wish I could eat like that. And the answer I always wanted to say was like, all right, you can. Like, wake up at 3:30, spend 2.5 hours on the bike in the freezing cold, don't eat for 3 more hours, and then come here and you can eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter, But like, there's certain things that just aren't going to click to people and aren't going to make sense to people. And I think part of it is you've got to be able to withstand that pressure, whether it's from society or from the people you used to hang out with, like, to not return to the norm. Because I think society is always pulling us back to what everybody does. And not that that's a bad thing, but if you want to be on a journey, I mean, this is called the Relentless Growth Podcast. If you want to be on a journey, if you want to grow, like, you've got to intentionally separate yourself from that center line at every day, because everything is pulling you back towards what I would call normal. And normal is not a bad thing. But if you want to be extraordinary, if you want to lead like a life that you dream of, then you've got to make some real conscious choices and be able to really live those choices and stand up to them when people question them sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One thing I try to remind myself of often, and I know I've talked to my wife about it sometimes, but it's like, I think that, like, I'm definitely trying to not live a normal life. But I have to realize that not everybody else is going to go down that same path, and that's okay.
Yep.
And so it's really easy to be like, oh, so-and-so could do X, Y, and Z and be in such a better place. And it's not our path, or the path I choose is not for everybody else. And just like there's some people out there who, like, business contexts literally kill themselves to be more successful. And that path isn't for me either. I've got my own. And that's why I come back to, like, that it's really important to spend some time and be intentional about who you want to become. But then there are things to do, like, get around people who are similar. The fitness one's a great example. Like, I'm for myself personally, like, I'm in the best shape that I've probably ever been in. But a lot of that was because I was just happened to be in a new GoPod through GoBundance with a couple guys who were just super fit. And, one of them was training for a half Ironman. Another one was a former, like, pro Ironman athlete who'd gone to the world champion. And it was just like, for them, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just very normal. And again, like, just being around them, it almost can't help but, like, you're going to get pulled up. And if that's something you desire, like, if you want to be in better shape, there's no longer that excuse of, like, oh, I don't know how to do it, or it's not possible, or because they're like, it's just not that big of a deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And other people are like, oh, it's insane. Like, I could never do that. But the problem is you start hanging out with guys who it's almost like the minimum standard. Like, oh, you haven't done a half Ironman yet? What's wrong with you? It's not that big of a deal. Just sign up and train for one. And so it is very important, but it can get a little bit lonely on the way, and it can get, some people are just not going to understand. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
Yep. No, that's 100% right. Yeah. The Ironman thing's a good, we are crazy. I think we understand that.
It's super unhealthy too. Like, it's not really healthy. Like, when you talk about the race itself, it's like literally you're destroying your knees and you're eating,
yep.
Like,
and
drinking Coke and eating salt. Like, it's not healthy for you.
But there's a point where, like, you get to where you want to do, I forget who the guy it's attributed to, but like doing hard things. Like you've just got to find joy in like doing hard things. And they're hard. Like a truly hard thing is not, it's not fun. Like training for an Ironman, let me tell you, it's not fun. Like there were very few mornings when like I'm in the middle of a run, a bike or a swim where I'm like, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. Like there are certainly times when you were, but like most of the time it's a grind. And you've just got to get in a headspace where you're enjoying the hard things and enjoying the struggle, and you're going to have struggle. Like I think that's the important thing. There's never going to be, nobody's ever going to live a life without struggle, whether it's work, personal, home, something's going to happen at some point that's going to be very difficult. And if you can prepare yourself and get used to hard things, it's going to infinitely better prepare you for whatever that situation is. I think the Ironman prepares me better for work, for home, for everything. And it relates to it in no way, shape, or form. There's no way biking 100 miles relates to how I perform as a husband, but I think it's helpful. And so all those things kind of, I feel like we're a little off track on our original point, but this is one of my favorite topics, just because the people you spend your time with, they challenge you, then you challenge them, and man, you look back in 3 years and you're all someplace that none of you thought you could get to. So I think it's just it's an incredibly powerful motivator.
Yeah, I guess maybe to start to wrap it up, like one of the final thoughts I would have on it is it's going to change over time as well, and that's okay. So like I keep going back to GoBundance because I think it's such a great example. But like I remember when I first joined, and I think it was back in like 2021, so it's been several years now. Like I didn't feel like I belonged in that room. Like I was the small fish in there, and I was barely doing anything compared to these guys I was sitting down at tables with and talking with and stuff. And so that's kind of drawn me up. And then as you progress a little bit, like it's important to find those new people to get around, or that new room to get in where you feel, in my opinion, where you feel that same way. Like you don't want to be the most successful person in that room, or the fittest person in that room, or whatever. And so it's like getting around that next level of people. And so for me, there's like a different level in GoBundance that I joined. And like I just got back from an event last week where I was around, 40 dudes who were all like hands down more successful than me. And so again, it's almost like starting over again, where it's like that same thing where you don't feel like you should be there, but you get around these guys. And again, there's no doubt in my mind that over time that'll start to pull me up in different aspects of my personal life and my business, my health and everything else. And so I would say just make that positive, or make the decision on who you want to become, get in that room that feels uncomfortable because people are farther along than you. And then make sure that over time, as you start to become more successful in these areas of your life, you try to get yourself into that next room where it feels uncomfortable again. How about for you?
Couldn't have said it better myself. Real tangible example, a GoBundance trip I went on was with 20 guys. And again, it's a strange example, but like we're playing pickleball and it's hot and everybody's taking their shirts off. And I mean, legitimately everybody besides me has like an 8-pack. And I'm like, what is happening?
Dang it.
Like, yeah, I was like, God, this is horrible. Like, part of me is embarrassed, but like it's taken those moments. And so for like the next 6 months, like I've never had a 6-pack in my life, and I'm not sure, I definitely don't have one now, but like I was in infinitely better shape. And it was like that motivating moment that was like, hey, these are the guys I respect. These are the guys I look up to. And they're on a journey that I want to be on. And I was like, why, if they can do it, I can do it. And so it's taken those moments and just letting them motivate you, rather than being like, all right, man, I can't. And we all have those moments too of like, all right, I'm never going to get there. I'm just going to go the other way. But I think that's one that pops into my head, is just taking those moments, letting it motivate you, and just attacking it. And I have no idea if the next time when I saw those guys, they noticed that I'd lost 30 pounds or not. And I don't care. It was a good positive step in my journey. And I'm not getting satisfaction from what they think. I'm satisfied that I made an improvement based on how I was motivated. And so I think it's just taking those motivators and really running with them.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us for today. So we appreciate everybody that's listened. If you could please follow us on whatever platform you're listening, and or give us a like or a review, or share it if you think there's somebody that may get value out of this, or may like what we're putting out there. Share it with them. And then again, if you guys have anything that you would be interested to hear more about, or any tips for us, like please don't be shy, and throw it in the comments or send one of us a message. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.